Hi, I'm Dr. Jamil Sayed, and on this podcast, we're going to talk about some deep stuff. I'm here to tell you that you're amazing, and often, the only person who can't see that is you. No matter who you are, what you do, or where you're from, there's greatness in you. Let's talk about it. Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Jamil Sayed, and welcome to the Transformation Starts Today podcast, where I interview leaders, champions, and high performers from all walks of life as they share their stories, the lessons they've learned along the way, and empowering perspectives to help you create an extraordinary life without regret, starting today. Today we have with us Dr. Regeline Gigi Sabbat. She is the CEO and founder of Life Service Center of America, LLC, motivational keynote speaker, award-winning author of the Walk With Me and God First books that have been endorsed by Les Brown. Side note, Les Brown's amazing, and I got into him when I was younger. We'll talk about that. Gigi is also the co-author of several best-selling book collaborations, and she's a life coach and confidence coach. As far as focusing and transformation goes, Gigi truly believes multi-skilled individuals make great leaders. It's not about focusing on so many things at once, but it's about utilizing all of your skills for the greater good and overall fulfilling God's purpose for our lives and to serve his people. Gigi, it's such an honor to have you on the show. Welcome.
It was such an honor to be here, and thank you for having me. And as I did mention, I know you and I spoke about it. My voice is a tad bit different. I was out in Brooksville, Florida for my first full marathon, 26.2. Time wasn't that great, but we still got it done. And unfortunately, the cold, the weather has affected my voice. So my voice is a tad bit different. But again, it's such an honor to be here today.
Yeah, thank you for being here. And I know a few people that have run half marathons, full marathons, and I know that can definitely be such a immense undertaking, both to prepare for and to actually run. And so just massive kudos to you. And let's say my request and my invitation for our listeners, and this applies to me, this applies to Gigi, this applies to any area of your life, regardless of how somebody sounds, how somebody looks, how anything, can you get the message? Can you get the underlying meaning that's there for you as a gift to receive? You're here for a reason. Pick up what you're meant to pick up.
Amen. I love it. Very powerful. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, thank you. And so we would love to just dive right in. And so for our listeners who don't know you yet, they haven't heard your story, can you please share with us who you are, what led you to where you are today, and what's inspired you to do what you do?
Absolutely. My faith has inspired me to do what I do. My name is Dr. Gigi Sabbat. I'm a motivational keynote speaker, and I'm also the CEO and founder of Life Service Center of America. Essentially, a few years ago, I almost lost my life, death by strangulation in a domestic violence relationship. After everything that happened, I stepped into God's purpose for my life, and I launched a podcast, the books, and the company Life Service Center of America. And God also led me to host events. It started off with domestic violence and sexual assault, topics I'm a survivor of, but he also led me to host them on various subjects. I mean, you name it. We haven't stopped: leadership, business, confidence, pregnancy. And this is possible because of the team. I'm grateful for the team.
Wonderful. Yeah, I've got a couple notes here. Let's see. So the first thing that stood out to me that you just shared is my faith inspired me. And I think that no matter who we are, we always have faith in something. And when we can come from that space, regardless of our spiritual beliefs, our religious beliefs, whatever we say that we believe in, there's always faith in something. And so our faith inspires us to move forward from a space of faith and not fear. And if we can come from that space, there's a level of trust that we're having for the process, a level of trust that we're having for life, for the unfolding. And then you mentioned, I almost lost my life. And some of our listeners, potentially, maybe they've experienced some similar things. And if not in that way, there's a metaphor I share often when I speak. There's a movie series called Back to the Future that many people have probably seen or heard of at least. And in the first movie, Marty, the main character, he goes back in time, and now he's probably 20 or however old he is. He goes back in time, and now he's at his parents' high school, and it's prom time, and he ends up meeting his mom. He meets his dad, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, like that's my parents." Like obviously they don't know who he is, and he ends up changing some things. And at one point, he pulls a photo out of his pocket, And it's a photo from his present day of his mom and dad as quote unquote, adults, grown-ups, and then him and his sister. They both disappear from the photo because whatever he just did made it where his parents aren't going to be together. And so he has to spend the rest of the movie trying to undo that. So he'll continue to live. Now, in that same way, you said, I almost lost my life. And so my invitation to everyone is the present moment is always pregnant with the next moment. So if you want a better tomorrow, if you want a better future, the only way to create that is you have to have a better now. Now, your present moment is the past of future you. So right now, your life is on the line because that future version of you that you would love to be will only continue to exist as possibility depending on what you do now. If what you do now continues to feed that life path. And so right now, when you said, I almost lost my life, in a metaphorical way, at least, every single person can relate to that right now because there's a version of your life that's on the line that you could almost lose depending on how you choose to show up in this moment right now. And the beauty is you have an infinite number of second chances. The moment you're aware, I am not pleased right now, I'm not satisfied with some aspect of my life, what are you going to do about it? Who will you choose to be in this moment? And then the next moment, and then the next moment. You could turn anything around one step at a time. And then the last thing you said, it's all possible because of my team. And I think that's so beautiful when people can remind themselves you don't have to approach life as like the Lone Ranger. You don't have to be by yourself, and you can accomplish so much more when you have a group of people around you. One of my teachers along my journey in business talks about your zone of genius and how you want to spend as much time as possible in your zone of genius, which is the thing that you do better than everyone around you. And ideally, that's the thing that you should spend essentially all of your time doing. But you surround yourself with people that their zone of genius is something different than yours. And so it's not that they're doing the thing that you don't want to do and they don't want to do it either. What you don't want to do, they love. And they really want to do that. And when you surround yourself with people like that and you can build that kind of team, what used to take you a year, you get done in a week because you have so much extra support. And so I just want to share those things in reflection to what you shared.
I love it. And it's absolutely correct. And I believe that staying in your scope is so important. And wonderful things can happen, especially again when you utilize all your skills and continuously serve, right? Because it would be so selfish to keep that to ourselves. As a good friend of mine and mentor said, Bob Proctor, it's you need to be selfless and share that knowledge and share that wisdom with others. It's okay. And I continuously share that out with others as well. It's okay to share that knowledge.
Yeah, a word that you just used as an invitation to our listeners. Being selfish is the most selfless thing you can do. And the reason why I share that, there's an old expression that people have always heard. It's like the plain metaphor of put your mask on first. Now, why? You go, but I want to take care of my family. I get that. That's honest. It's awesome. It's honorable. Now, the thing is that if you pass out halfway through trying to put a mask on somebody, now you've become part of the problem. Now you're like this lifeless bag that's weighing on somebody. But if you put yours on, now as long as the plane's still up, you can do all the things you got to do. Another metaphor for those on video, you'll see it, and if you're on audio, you'll be able to hear this. If I've got my water bottle here and I say, I'm really thirsty, I want to take a sip. And as I'm about to put it to my mouth, people come up and they go, can I have some? So I stop and I go, sure. And I pour and I pour and I pour. And then now my bottle's halfway. And then I'm like, all right, they went away. I'm thirsty. And I'm on my way to drink. And then more people show up. Can I have some? And I go, sure. And I give and I give and I give. At some point, I've got drops. And now I'm still thirsty, but I don't know how much I have in there. So I go to take a sip and basically nothing comes out. And then more people show up. Can I have some? And now not only I can't give to them, I can't give to me. Now, what's the alternative? The alternative is you give to yourself so you overflow and you give from the overflow. And when you give from the overflow, you can give forever. And when you come from that space, I would much rather set myself up to be able to contribute and serve my community and the world as much as I can for the rest of my life than burn the candle so bright that I can only serve for the next 6 weeks and then I'm done and I can't serve anymore. And so what if you being selfish, AKA you taking care of you, honoring yourself and making sure you're full so that you don't burn out, so you don't die early, so you don't minimize the impact you can make in the long term by trying to maximize what you can do in the short term. And so I wanted to share that too, because a lot of people I think have and myself included for most of my life, we have a negative association because of the way society typically talks about the word selfish. And we usually see it as a bad thing. And there can be contexts where I could see it as a negative. But if you focus on being selfish as focusing on yourself and taking care of you, if you take care of you, you'll be a better parent. If you take care of you, you'll be a better spouse. If you take care of you, when everything around you is falling apart and your people, your team, your family, your community, they need you, they need someone to rely on, they need the shoulder to cry on, they need that strong rock that they can depend on. Because you've taken care of you, you have the freedom and the bandwidth to take that on. But if you're barely hanging on, and
Right.
now they need help, you're going to break and it's not going to work. And so and as I kind of close this close this up right here, if you look at your calendar right now, where can you install what I call white space? And white space is time that's actually scheduled. It's not just you don't just leave it blank because then it fills. You actually schedule a time that's just for you. There's no work being done in that time. It might be go for a walk, take a nap, read, get a massage, just do something that's restorative for you. Just think. Give yourself the space. That's where the miracles get created. But if you don't give yourself the space, I say, what's the most important thing in your life? Or who's the most important person in your life? And if the answer is not you, you're doing everyone in your life a disservice because it's not about being selfish. It's about saying, I'm going to take care of me so that I can take care of us. I'm going to take care of me so I can be as present as possible for you.
Love it. Very powerful. You cannot serve from an empty cup, period.
Yeah. 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 So, so good. And so with that in mind, I would love to hear from you. Who have been your greatest role models as it relates to leadership in your life? And what specifically stood out or did you learn from them?
My goodness, great question. So my mother, first and foremost, bless her soul, she's my role model. But not just that, I've also had the opportunity of working with amazing coaches as well and mentors. Grateful for those individuals as well. I can list a few here. So
Please.
Les Brown, Bob Proctor, Forbes Riley, Brennan Burchard, and also I want to also talk about my personal trainer, Chelsea Denlinger, a fitness trainer, and also Jonah Casio, a business coach, amazing souls, and the list goes on. And I'm grateful for all of the coaches that I've had and mentors.
Mm. And so before actually, I have a follow-up to that, but could you share what specifically stood out to you? Not necessarily for each person, but when you thought about, I'm investing in myself, for example, or what I got from my mom, what were the primary things that you saw they role modeled in their leadership that made you say, I want to do that. I want to be that.
I love it. And it's my mother always instilled in me hard work, hard work. Nothing is easy in life. It takes hard work, and that's okay. And understanding that, again, I love to serve others, but it takes hard work. It's not going to be easy. I understand that. Hard work, regardless of what you do in life, it's hard work. Don't expect things to be easy. It's going to be hard work. You want to get an education, hard work. Everything, hard work.
Hmm. Yeah, there's a few things there. Um, One thing that comes to mind, I was just having a session with a client earlier, and he brought up the idea of I need to have an uncomfortable conversation. And in terms of not with me, but in terms of like later that day,
Yes.
I said to him, you mind if I mess with your thinking a little bit? And he starts laughing. He goes, sure. And I, and I tell him, there's no such thing as an uncomfortable conversation. There's only such thing as you having an uncomfortable experience in that conversation. But it's not because of the conversation. It's because how you relate to it. There's no such thing as a difficult conversation. There's no such thing as an awkward conversation. There's how you show up to the conversation that makes it in your experience difficult, hard, awkward, etc. And so it's not just a semantic thing, language creates. So how we talk about something, how we describe something, it becomes that for us. And so I shared with them, try this on. I'm choosing to have an important conversation later today. And how does that feel? When we say, I'm going to have an awkward conversation or I have to have an awkward conversation, no one chooses to have it, right? So I have to. So now it's like, well, the have to brings the obligation sense. And then the awkward makes it where you want to put it off and avoid it. But if it's, I'm choosing to have an important conversation, why? Because it matters, because something's on the line here. Now you're more likely to have it, but there's a level of reverence that you show up there. And so, with that being said, I just want to share a different perspective as it relates to there's effort that's always required for anything, there's sacrifice that's always required for anything. And it's interesting because the idea of hard work or hard or difficult, and it's like, how am I relating to a situation that's creating a sense of heaviness? If it does, if it doesn't always, it may not for everybody, but just play with the idea. Where am I labeling my experience for our listeners? Where am I labeling my experience right now in a way that's making me want to put off, delay, avoid, whatever, or just resent whatever it is that I'm considering doing or thinking I quote unquote have to do. And then what does that do to how you show up to whatever that is? Do you show up as at your high? I was giving a talk last night and I said to the crowd, how many of you by show of hands show up at your highest and best when you're frustrated, pissed off, and impatient? And everybody laughs because like nobody shows up that way. But if you're showing up in that state of being, that's
Yes.
how you're going to be received. That's the energy that's flowing through you. And so in that same way, just being aware, how am I labeling my experience? And then is that getting in the way of me having the experience that I want? And then the second thing that I want to reflect back to you as an acknowledgement and for our listeners to try on, you listen to all the wonderful people that Gigi has worked with, hired, invested in order for her to create the results that she wants in her life. You know, working, you know, Les Brown, Bob Proctor, Brendan Burchard, your personal trainer, your business coach. When somebody tells me these kind of things and I hear that, it's so beautiful to see how sincerely you take your success and you sit there and you say, you know what, in order for me to get to the highest levels I can get to, why do I try to reinvent the wheel? Why do it all myself when there's people who can help me get there faster and compress that time? And some of the people that you've mentioned, you know, Les Brown, I said it, you know, in that little caveat in the bio, when I was 15 years old, this intuition came to me and it was very specific. And it said, go on YouTube, type in motivation 2005. And I
Oh.
was like, okay. I typed it in and I got this little motivational montage video of Les Brown, Brian Tracy, Tony Robbins. I didn't know any of these people. And it had the music in the background and they were just speaking from stage. And it was so inspiring. And I'd never heard anyone speak that way. And then read Les Brown's book. I, what is it called? I think he has like one. I read his book. It was great. I think You Could Change Your Life or something like that. It was an amazing book. But I read that and watched all of his stuff, and the amount of people I know who that just that guy has helped shift their whole world. And him, Bob Proctor, it's amazing. And the fact that you're investing yourself on multiple levels, just want to really acknowledge you for that. And for our audience, in what ways are you investing in yourself? It could be with money, it could be with attention, it could be with time. But in what ways are you saying, I want some help? Because I want to get where I'm going faster.
Yes, I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that, Jamel. And not just that, circling back here, and I love what you said in regards to your perspective as well. Very powerful, very inspiring. And also, too, what comes to mind in regards to hard work is the toughness that makes it great, right? Especially for us motivational speakers, we love it, right? It's the toughness that makes it great. And when you talk about, you know, as you mentioned, some of the folks that I have worked with, it's such an honor. Bless your souls. And it's been such an honor to work with them, but not just that, to serve others as well and continuously doing so, right? It's not one and done, it's continuously doing so. And again, I've just enjoyed the journey and just letting go and letting him.
Yeah. Something that comes to mind when you share that, you mentioned the word service. And I remember, you know, you can't see it on camera, but I got my bookshelf over here with probably 1,000 like books on it. And if you saw my browser, I've got like 8 courses that I'm doing online that are all minimized. And the thing is that I consider one of my favorite quotes is the master has mastered the art of being a student forever. That there's never a point where you quote unquote arrive, where the learning is done. And if we come from that space, I think about a book that I'm reading or a training that I'm going through, and not only am I reading or studying it because I enjoy it and it'll benefit me, but I look at that book and I say, there's somebody I'm going to meet, learn from, work with, etc., in a week, in a month, in 5 years, and whatever. And because of what I'm learning here in this training, in this book, in this course, in this coaching program, that's going to help me help them. That's going to potentially save their life. And when you think about it like that, A, it becomes so much more exciting to invest in yourself in that way. But B, whether you're a service professional, whether you're a psychologist or a coach or a doctor or a lawyer, somebody who's working with other people, the work that you do on you radiates out, impacts everyone around you. And even if it's your family or your kids or your parents, you work on you, everyone around you benefits because they get that expanded version of you. And so I'm sure when you do your motivational talks and speeches, somebody is in your presence, they walk away glowing. They walk away radiating. Everyone now that they come into contact with gets a better version of them because they met Gigi.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And also, I want to circle back because you talk about Les Brown a tad bit there, and I want to circle back to him. Bless his soul and bless his family as well. Beautiful souls, but not just that. He also met me where I was, especially in regards to what just happened as well. I mean, with domestic violence and his deep understanding of what I had been through. I mean, my God. And just again, his deep understanding meant a lot. And I believe that again, he meets people where they are, and it's important to do so. It's very important.
Mm, I love that. There is a something coming up for me in what you've shared a few different times that I feel called to share. So whether it was with Les Brown, whether it was with your mom, whether it was with these different mentors, you've used the phrase, bless their soul. And for our audience, so there's a book that I read a few years back that I highly recommend, and it's called The Gentle Art of Blessing. And it's not a religious book, it's more of a spiritual book and more of a way that anyone could read that and relate to it and shift the whole way they live their life. And I want you to think about this. So when Gigi says, bless their soul, or if she's speaking to somebody, whether verbally or just in her mind, if she's thinking, wow, bless that person, what's happening in multiple levels. First, it's shifting how she relates to the people, because I often tell my clients what you appreciate appreciates. And when you think about appreciation, there's at least two definitions of that. The first one is more of a gratitude or a thankfulness, but the second one is a financial kind of definition to increase in value. So when you appreciate another person, they increase in value in your mind for you. And so in that same way, when Gigi sees somebody and she says, wow, bless their soul, when she approaches them now, there's going to be more reverence. They're going to feel that care, that love, that heart, that compassion. That's going to enhance every relationship she has. You all have the power to do your version of that, whether you use that phrase or some other phrase. But when you wish well to people, when you come from that space of love, people feel that consciously or not. There's something called a biofield, the old word that people would use to describe that as an aura. And this biofield can be measured, and it's coming out of the body, especially out of the heart. And you can see it on certain machines. And when people say, you know what, I get a bad vibe when I'm around that person, or the opposite, when I'm around you, I just feel good. I just feel myself. I feel lighter. I feel happy. They're feeling your field. And so when you come from that space, the head space, the heart space, the soul space of, in Gigi's words, bless their soul, even before you even speak to them, as you're like approaching, or if you have that reverence for them, people feel that every one of your relationships, whether they be professional, personal, will dramatically improve. And that's my loving invitation to everyone to take on, because I've seen it firsthand change so many people's lives. And you model that beautifully, consistently on this podcast. And I wanted to just point it out.
Thank you. Yes, and treat others how you want to be treated, right? It's yeah, and do unto others. It's very important, biblical as well, statements as well to abide by. And my faith means the world to me, obviously.
Yeah. 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 So, so good. Now, I know that you have something on your website that I resonated with, and I wanted to see what it meant to you and if you could share more about it. So, what does walking with purpose mean to you?
Yes, walk with purpose. So essentially, when we talk, it's just like similar to purpose of life. So, and life and growth is the beauty of life. So when we talk about purpose, right? What's your purpose, right? And God will reveal that to you. And I think it's so important when He does reveal His purpose for your life to you to stay in purpose and not say, okay, well, I'm aware of it, but I'm going to be disobedient. I'm going the other way. No, stay in God's purpose for your life, not one foot in and one foot out. Keep both feet in purpose. And so I can't help but tell you how many times people tell me, Gigi, you are living God's purpose for your life. You are in purpose. what you're doing now as a speaker and what you're doing. There have been people who have told me straightforward, publicly, you are living God's purpose for your life. And so here's the thing, but that awareness key is important as well, which I agree with folks as well. But not just that, staying in purpose, because we can be aware, but now if we're aware and again we're being disobedient, that is terrible. We have to stay in purpose and continue to do what he's called us to do here.
Yeah. A few things to reflect back that I think could be really useful for everybody. So I want to share this first in a broad sense so that as many people as possible can benefit from this and relate to it. So just as a general caveat, whatever that highest good, highest purpose is for you, substitute that word that resonates. But with this in mind, that idea with, I wrote, listen to your inner voice. And this idea that you said the purpose. And very often we've got, whether we call it a conscious, whether we call it your intuition, whether we call it the gut feeling, whether we call it God's talking to us, whatever we call that, there's this inner, it starts off silent and then it whispers. And it's like, hey, how much longer are you going to keep doing this thing? Or am I, and then you ignore it, like most of us do. And then it turns into knock, knock, no longer whispering. Now it's just speaking regular. Hey, really? Again? And then we ignore it again. And then it gets louder, and I'm not going to yell into the mic, but now it's yelling at you. And often, if we keep ignoring it, we get sick. And so it comes physically. And so it comes from the space of look at yourself in the mirror. What comes up? Are you proud of who you see? Are you proud of how you've lived your life? Are you proud of the journey that you've been on and how you reflect on it? And are you proud of what you're planning on doing? Does it reflect what Gigi might call God's purpose for your life and what you might call the highest good you can consider or the most exciting life you could create or whatever you would call that? Is your life reflective of that? Are you listening to that inner knowing? One of the thoughts that came to mind years ago when I was thinking about my business and what I do, and I thought, well, I would love it for everyone I work with every night to go to sleep. And when their head hits that pillow, it's like the way I, lovingly and jokingly say it is, God, angel, genie, something shows up and says, if this was your last day on this earth, let me preface that actually, not that. You're laying there, your head hits the pillow, and this being shows up and says, you're not going to wake up tomorrow morning. This was it. How was it? And I want you to be able to fall asleep at peace, knowing that you gave it all you had. That you feel so at peace with going to sleep, ready, going, I'm ready. This was what a ride. This was great. And I find that most people are afraid of dying because they know deep down what, or maybe on the surface, that they haven't really lived because they've been living by fear, not by faith. And if they come from that space of recognizing I've been ignoring that inner voice for quite some time, I've known that this job or this person or this situation is not right for me anymore. And maybe I've known that for a long time, but I've been ignoring it because I've been afraid of whatever the alternative is. But the thing is I think I heard this from Les Brown actually. Most people are most people prefer known hells to unknown heavens. And so because the known hell is familiar, and so we keep choosing it. The unknown heaven is unfamiliar, and so we don't choose it because we're afraid of, I don't know what's over there. And so Les Brown tells this story, which I've never shared on this podcast, but it's very relevant in our conversation, where he basically says, I'm going to paraphrase it, but there's a guy, he's in a prison, and he's being told he's going to be likely put to death. And the general, the commander, whoever it is, he walks up to him and he basically says, so tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., you're going to face the gallows, or you can walk out that door. And the guy goes, what's behind the door? And he goes, nobody knows. And the guy chooses the gallows. And then after he dies, somebody who knew the general, the commander, whoever it was, says, sir, what's behind that door? And he goes, freedom. It's just most people don't choose it because they don't know what it's going to be, like how it's going to look. And so in that same way, where are you keeping yourself in this familiar yet unserving environment where you feel like your spirit's dying and you know that you can make a change? And what if that could be the best thing you could do, not only for yourself, but those you care most about? And so I just wanted to share that. And then you also mentioned this idea of your purpose. And I wrote create versus discover. Very often people think they're trying to discover their purpose. But for me, like when I think about that, discovering my purpose, it's like almost like go into your yard and discover the buried treasure. That implies it's already there. Like it's out there and you got to go look for it.
Right.
Versus what if it's create your purpose? What if it's you don't have to wait? What if it's already there and you get to just reveal it, or you get to create it moment by moment based on what do I feel called? What if we say God, source, Holy Spirit, intuition, hunch, whatever word you want to use is flowing through and it's telling me you're being called to this. This is what people keep telling you, you got to do that. Or this is what lights you up, makes your spirit sing, your heart smile. Why aren't you doing that more? Like this is the stuff that you already have the answer either in full or in part, but potentially you've been ignoring it either completely or like when Gigi said, being disobedient. And so it's either being disobedient to God or it's being disobedient to your own inner wisdom. And if you come from that space of what could happen if you listened, what could happen if you try, you can always go back to living the old way. And the old way, it's not creating the results that you want, but you're always free to go back if you don't like it. But why not try? Take the chance on you. One of my past clients, Michael Ketchen, he's been a podcast guest on the show. He's got a little quote, just hashtag bet on you, bet on yourself. And he finishes like all of his videos online with that. Bet on yourself. Like you can do it. Like bet on you.
Right. Yes. And it's so important too, because some folks will say, well, I can't bet on me because of the trauma that I faced, or I have too much trauma. Well, no, nothing's too much for him. And literally, I can't help but think about the Overcoming Heart Blocks book, Inspiring Stories for Healing from Trauma book that I just recently released with friends, and my mother who came forward about her own heart block as well. And so when we talk about heart blocks, I remember someone asking me, what does it feel like on the other side of the heart blocks? And in one word they asked, and for me it was peace. But it required that I face it. You have to face it. And so in regards to the sexual assault, I mean, that happened when I was 8 and again as an adult. But not just that, there's other challenges that I face as well in regards to domestic violence, as we talked about earlier. But all of these things, you have to acknowledge that, okay, this happened. Yes, it happened, but now what, right? Now what is the question? Give it to him. Give your battles to him.
Yeah, a few things that came up. There's a Joseph Campbell quote. Joseph Campbell is a famous mythologist, and he said, "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek." And I love that quote. And I've got this image on my phone that I send to clients, and I found it online. And it was like this beautiful like cave, and the guy's like outside of it. And he's like not wanting to go in. But that idea that that which you want is often on the other side of fear. And often we think fear is bad. Now, fear can be life-saving. Fear can be your innate wisdom coming through, trying to save you. But sometimes fear can just be a voice of limitation. And it could just be that voice of playing small, don't rock the boats, keep it familiar. It could be things from the past, other people's voices that are in your head that you call yours, but it was a parent or it was a caregiver or it was somebody that you knew that just spoke a lot of discouraging, limiting things to you. And that voice is just from a real estate metaphor, it's like it's living rent free in your head. And it's like, we don't need that anymore. And so that was the first part. And then you said, face it. And from a medical perspective, the idea of you got to feel it to heal it, that's very often the case that these emotions that have been stuck. One of my mentors, Dr. Barry Taylor, he was also on the show early on, and he said most people are walking around with unexperienced experiences. And so we have all these experiences that we never experienced. And so it's like trapped in our body and it's got to come out because it's creating dis-ease. And once you can feel it and you can move through it, you can release it. And when you can finally let that go, it might be scary. There are some people that have a lot of pain, or they've got a physical pain, or they've got some type of, let's say condition, whatever it might be, and they have immense hesitation to letting it go because they actually have perceived they get benefit for keeping the problem. And so just being willing to face it and to get clear on what do I get from this? And what if I let it go? What could be possible for me? And you mentioned like awareness, like it starts with awareness, but now are you got the awareness? What are you going to do with it? If you know, like it doesn't really help to know and not to do. I think there's an old expression, he who knows how to read but doesn't is no better than he who can't read. It's the same kind of idea. You mentioned, I was going to ask you about that book, The Heart Block. Can you speak to that, define what that is and what that means so our audience are on the same page?
Yeah, great. So we actually talk about it a little bit more as well in the book. And so going to into a little bit more of a dialogue, right? So many people develop a heart block after a traumatic experience.
Yeah.
Heart blocks are blocks around your heart that have developed as a result of trauma, and they interfere with one's ability to live a fulfilling life. Now, overcoming heart blocks helps people overcome their heart blocks and heal from trauma. And the book includes stories from incredible people who have overcome their heart blocks, and each heart block survivor provides helpful information and action steps for you to begin to transform your life. And again, when we talk about heart blocks and all these things and we talk about facing it, I love what you brought to my attention here as far as the back end component, right? Because we can talk about the forefront and the overcoming component and all these things, but what you did, you kind of brought us back a little bit here as far as the background, what's going on in the background, the pain that we're feeling, those emotions that we're feeling. And I love that because, yeah, I was scared to death. Yeah, you have to face it. When you're facing it, you're going to be scared to death. It's uncomfortable, right? But you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. But I went there, and not just me, but other individuals as well. Those individuals as well. They all went there. Even my own mother went there. The authors of the book, it's a collaborative book, right? So it required that you went there, but you allowed yourself to feel those emotions. How on earth can you overcome the heart block if you don't face it and we don't allow ourselves to feel those emotions?
Yeah, I have found in my own life as well as with so many people I've met. So anyone who's been, let's say, a body worker, massage therapist, things of that nature, who they're working on people's bodies for a long enough period of time, when people have knots or the tissue is like messed up in whatever capacity, they often form trigger points. And these trigger points, you have one when like you press it and it hurts, it's like a little knot. And what I had experienced when I was in medical school, I had the opportunity to do some type of physical medicine and people were working on me. And there was a muscle that when they pressed into it, it wasn't comfortable. And it was like behind the abdomen. So it's like you got kind of like massage the intestines out of the way. And when they pressed into that area, weird sensation. And I was like, ooh. Then the woman lets go and she goes, "You okay?" And I go, "Yeah." And then within about a few seconds, I start laughing and crying, and I couldn't stop for a half hour. No, no, literally everyone in the room who was also practicing, I was like, when I laugh and I get like that, everyone's laughing. So it's like everyone is laughing. I can't stop. The teacher's laughing. At the end of 30 minutes or so, I finally can get my, I finally got grips of myself. And the teacher looked at me and she goes, "Wow. Like I've only ever seen that once before. You just had a massive emotional release and you are glowing right now." Fast forward a year, and I'd never gotten a massage in my life. And I went to a friend of mine who was in massage therapy school. And it was I guess they need a certain amount of clinic hours for practice. And so one month, one weekend a month, I think one Saturday a month, people can come in from the community. And I think they either get a free or a discounted massage. And I went to see him. And he just happened, I didn't tell him anything, it's been a year. He happens to get that same muscle on the other side from what the woman did a year prior. And I just started laughing and crying uncontrollably for about a half hour. And it was like happy tears, but he's laughing, everyone around is laughing. And I've met people that when they have that kind of release, a memory shows up, sometimes traumatic, that they haven't thought about in decades. And they go, "Where did that come from? Like, why am I crying right now? Why am I laughing?" Or whatever experience they're having. Because that emotion gets stored in the tissue when you don't let it out. And that is not just like a pain kind of thing. That could be cancer. That could be an autoimmune disease. That could be anything. And so you sit there and you say, what if there's so much more going on in this human experience than I've been led to believe? And what if it's as one aspect of it could be as simple and straightforward as whatever you're feeling for a reason, and everything you're feeling is meant to be expressed. Now, there's a time to do that. There might be times where it might be inappropriate for whatever the reason. There might be times where expressing it could be to varying degrees of respectfulness. But like the
Yeah.
point is that there's a time and place, and there needs to be an outlet. You don't just build it up. And I'm reading a book right now that is phenomenal, and it's coming from this space that chronic anger is often the cause of so much pain, liver issues, cirrhosis, hepatitis, all these kind of things that can happen because you've got this chronic resentment. And I remember being in medical school and this woman that was a student of mine, not of mine, with me, and she had said to me, "Oh, yeah, I had back pain my whole life. And it started when my brother and I stopped talking, like 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And we talked, and then she went and made it right with her brother, and her back pain went away the next day."
Incredible.
And so you just sit there and say, where am I unwilling to face, to experience, to feel? And maybe you don't want to do it on your own. Beautiful. Reach out for help. Find a qualified person who can help you with this and get support. There's no reason you have to take this on alone. There's plenty of people that are ready and waiting to help you through this journey. But it takes that courage to ask for help.
That's right. And I believe having faith as small as a mustard seed is so important. And so when we talk about all of this and facing all the trauma and all these things, it's just a small bit of faith. That's it. Just a little bit of faith. That's it. You're basically, like you're saying as well, you're stepping into the unknown, but give it to him. And it's okay. You don't need to know everything, but he already knows.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a quote that I love from Martin Luther King Jr., and he said, "You don't have to see the whole staircase, take the first step in faith."
Amen.
And it reminds me to this perspective. We often, using that staircase metaphor, we often want to see the whole staircase before we start. And when you think about your life as it's unfolded, there have been times where you've been able to predict accurately, like 10 steps ahead. But more often than not, your prediction's wrong. More often than not, it either goes way better than you thought it was going to, or it just goes differently than you thought it was going to. Excuse me. But if you don't allow yourself to start until you know, it's almost like I won't start reading the book until I know how it ends. But assuming you can't just skip to the end, that means you're never going to read the book. And so, in that same way, the faith of a mustard seed idea, if we think about it from a different perspective, but the same idea, you only need, it's like one powerful decision, one decision of faith, one choice to just step forward despite being afraid changes everything. It creates the possibility of a whole new life. Right now, there's people listening who there's a person, you're afraid to ask that person out, but you're interested. You have a moment of faith, a moment of courage, faith of a mustard seed. You ask, they happen to say yes, changes the whole trajectory of your life. There's a decision that, I really want that promotion, or I want to start that business, or I want to leave this relationship, or I want to do whatever, but I'm afraid. Very often, we're afraid to ask because we're afraid of no. But what's the alternative? I remember hearing J.K. Rowling, the author of Harry Potter, and she was giving I think it was a commencement speech at some college or university, but she basically said, if you don't start, if you don't try, you fail by default. And so you're afraid of rejection, or you're afraid of failure, or you're afraid of no, but your solution to it is to say no to yourself. So you fail by default. Like you did not get what you wanted, versus if you asked, there was at least a chance. There was a possibility they might say yes. But instead, you didn't even give them a chance to say no. You said no for them. You made it absolute. Do you want to keep doing that? I never come from a place of blame, shame, fault, or guilt. It's coming from a space of could, never should. Should to me is rooted in shame, it's rooted in guilt. But if you came from could, that's rooted in possibility. Given the way your life has been up until this point, is that what you want to remain committed to? And if the answer is no, what change could you make? How could you step forward starting right now in the present moment to create the next moment? That changes everything.
Right. Fail forward. It's okay. And not just that, but get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What do you find to be um, when somebody remains in their comfort zone? What do you find to be the primary, let's say, consequence of that? And how do you find the most effective ways are to help people shift out of that?
Absolutely. I remember, and this is a story that's coming to mind. I remember a gentleman, he said that he was a business owner and he used to be the guy in the back. He never thought he'd come to the forefront. He used to be the one whispering in the back. You never hear him. He said, "Good, this is how my life is going to go. It's great. You're never going to see me in the front lines." Okay. Now he's on the front lines, public speaker. Here he is. But he says, "How on earth did this happen when I was the guy in the back of my business? You would never have seen me beforehand." God already knew. God already knew. And it required, obviously, that he gets out of his comfort zone because he wasn't comfortable doing that, obviously, in the first place. He used to be in the back, the quiet guy in the back, but now he's in the forefront as a public speaker. I think it's awesome.
Mm. That reminds me of a quote that I really love. The oak is implied in the acorn. And so when you see an oak tree, this beautiful, massive tree, and it looks huge, and you go, this thing must, I don't know how long this is, hundreds of years old, who knows, thousands maybe. And you grab a little acorn from the ground that you can just hold. And every one of these acorns potentially can become an oak tree. And then you realize that one oak tree produces however many acorns. I'm going to make a number up because I don't know. Thousands and thousands of acorns. That means that one oak tree or one acorn in your hand is
Yes.
potentially an entire forest. You're holding the entire forest in possibility. And so in that same way, who you could be exists as possibility right now within you. The only thing is to just choose it, to lean in, to have that faith and say, you know what? I'm no longer going to live by the story of who I was. I'm no longer going to live by this past identity. I mentioned I gave a talk last night and I shared with them the word identity, my understanding in Latin, it means repeated being. And the challenge with that is people think their identity is a static, unchanging thing. And they say, this is just the way that I am. And the challenge with that is it's BS, belief systems. And it's probably the other thing too. And so it comes from that space of we say, who I am is this way. And we put ourselves in a box and we lock it in. But now, how unfair is that both to yourself and to anybody else? Because who you are is who you repeatedly be, which means that you've been it habitually so many times that you've forgotten and it's become unconscious. And now you just think it's you. But what if you could change that and recognize you can shift your identity and be what's required of you in this moment to create the life that you want? Because everything has a sacrifice. We said that earlier regarding the hard work. And it's whatever you're wanting to create. You want an amazing, fulfilling relationship. You want a life, a world-changing business. You want to contribute to the world in some way. You want to make your community better. You want to get your health and fitness on track. Whatever you want to do, that's going to require a certain version of you that isn't currently present if you're not experiencing those results. And so the moment you make that shift, everything changes for you. And you can choose to make that moment to moment to moment.
Right. And you are a leader. There's a leader in everyone. And I can't help but think about another collaborative book that I wrote with friends, and it's called Voices for Leadership, Volume 2, Embracing Diverse Strategies for Effective Leadership. And so, again, leadership, right? And there's a leader in you, and allow yourself, allow your voice to be heard. Your voice matters. We want to hear from you.
And given that, what does leadership mean to you?
Such a great question. So leadership, right? Your ability to take yourself out of it and understanding it's not about us, it's about the people that we serve. And I truly believe when you're there in the moment, be there in the moment. When listen in, and don't just listen in to just answer, just be there, listen, and serve.
Serve, serve, serve.
Yes.
Yeah, I believe this is the name of the book. I have it. I think it's just called Servant Leadership. It's a beautiful book, and the audiobook's really cool too. But if you show up with that service mindset, like you said, remove yourself from the equation in the Tao.
Yes.
The Tao is a holy book, let's say, if you want to call it that, for Taoism, and beautiful book. And there's a part, I'm going to paraphrase it. So the master is Lao Tzu is the author. The master refers to that aspect of within each of us. It's like the best of who we could be. And the master leads in such a way that the people say we did it ourselves. And so it's coming from that space. The best leaders, they lead in such a way that their people feel empowered. Their people feel like it wasn't like handed to them. They made it happen themselves, even though the leader was guiding in certain ways. But the people, like the best leaders, make more leaders. They're not making more followers.
Right. That's right. Absolutely. And I truly believe growth is truly the beauty of life. And I believe that whatever challenge or trauma someone has faced is not it. There is more in this lifetime for you. And there's also a light at the end of the tunnel, but not just that, healing. I want to share another collaborative book here. It's called Healing and Growth that I wrote with friends. And my mom also, she came forward as well about her own healing journey. And so when we talk about healing, healing is truly unique. Everyone's healing journey is truly unique. I don't want to rush anyone, but I will tell you this, you don't have to stay in the stuck, right? So inspiring stories for massive transformation is the subtitle of this book because we believe that you can transform your life. All things are possible with him.
I love
Oh,
that.
I
You
believe
don't
him.
have to stay in the stuck. I love that. Yeah, absolutely. And, for different people, we're all on different parts of our journey, and there's people listening right now that just hearing that, I don't have to stay in the stuck. And they go, really? Like, no one's ever told me that. I didn't know I could get out of this. Like, and so I hope that people are really listening because there's so much gold in this conversation so far that depending on where you are in your journey, it's not like, in my experience, it's not one and done, like Gigi said earlier. Life is not linear, it's cyclical. And so we will re-experience certain themes. And so there's certain aspects of what we're talking about that right now are directly relevant to where you're at. And there's certain aspects that might be relevant to where you're at in 6 months. And so either way, though, please really be here and give yourself the gift. And so, Gigi, the purpose for me of this conversation, not this conversation, this podcast, I call it Transformation Starts Today. And I want to support people in creating an extraordinary life without regret. If people were to ask you, how do I do that? What would your advice be?
Every day like it's your last with no regrets as you and I spoke about, right? It's almost like you have to be there in the moment, and it's a blessing. Cherish every single moment in this lifetime. Life is short.
Mm,
Life is very short. And earlier on the call, you heard me tell you today, I almost lost my life, death by strangulation. I did not foresee that coming. You don't know these things. I've never been in an abusive relationship like that in my entire life. So the fact that that happened, I mean, it's just wow, I got the shock of my life. But here's the reality. It was brought to my attention that strangulation is the number one cause of death in those type of relationships. And so again, you don't know when it's your last. Well, and it's not just me, right? We also heard from an individual. He wrote a book, right? He talks about how he was in an accident, right? And he almost lost his life and is in an accident. You don't know. You just don't know. It can happen anywhere, anyhow. You do not know. But the reality is life is short, period. And so literally listening into him or whomever you believe in higher power and continuously serving others. And remember, it's not about us, it's about the people that we serve. And when you're there, be there and enjoy every moment and find joy in the journey of life. Life is truly beautiful.
yeah.
And there's so much more to be grateful for than there is to be angry or bitter about. I tell you what, it could be, you could be seeing all these things that are terrible, or because we all face challenges, right? In this lifetime, those are inevitable. And so essentially, those are there. But literally, there's so much to be grateful for. I could have my worst day and I can still see something beautiful because there's always something beautiful there. And it's not me. Literally, God brings it to you to the forefront to see, my child, there's still something to be grateful for. And at the end of the day, all I can say is thank you, God. Thank you, God. And you don't question him, you say thank you.
Mm. Yeah, I'm reminded of two things. So there's a Steve Jobs quote where he said, every day I wake up, I look myself in the mirror, and I ask, if today was my last day on this earth, would I want to do what I'm about to do? And if the answer is no, too many days in a row, I know something needs to change. And then I think it's a Dalai Lama quote. If you live every day as if it's your last, one day you will surely be right. And so it comes from that space of none of us know, like using the metaphor of like an hourglass. It gets turned over the moment you're born. None of us know how much sand is left in there. But you know that there's still some because you're here. So then the question is, what's worth this unknown amount of sand that you have left? You can use that as a powerful filter. What do I say yes to? And what do I say no to? And if you come from that space, it changes so much because I find that even though I think every moment you can extract immense value from, you can learn from it. But it's interesting when there's something that you really want, but then you choose to prioritize other things on top of it out of fear. And now it's like your life experience is, let's say, not what you would like it to be. And now the sand that's in that hourglass is less than, and you may not have the time to create the things that it is you're wanting to create. So where could you step into just fully living now? Like I love the three-word phrase, be here now. And if you could just be here now fully and completely, you could honor what it is, that intuition, that gut feeling, God's voice, whatever it is coming through about, hey, this is something to do. Hey, this excites you. This speaks to you for a reason. I love that perspective that what if we say the things that speak to you, that excite you, that light you up, they do that for a reason. Because there's somebody else they don't do that for. If there's a cause, a charitable, let's say, cause that you really feel strong about and you guys really want to make a difference in this area, well, that's wonderful. Because there's other people who don't care about that area. And that's not a bad thing because there's certain areas that aren't that important to you. And so we need people who like all those areas. But if this is the thing that's calling to you, what if we play with the possibility? It's not an accident. It's calling to you for a reason. It's for you to do something about. And you have the free will to say no, but there's going to be some consequences to that. And often it's this unfulfilling frustration, like this life, like, is this all there is kind of feeling? And it doesn't have to be that way. And so much can be changed.
That's right. And I agree with you 100%. And I love what Ayanna Van Zandt says when she says, stand in your no. And there's so many different ways to say no. So you can't say that you don't know how to say no because there's so many different ways. I love when she says that because it's true. And not just that, but if you say yes to everything, you can't be where God needs you to serve. So
Yes.
be very mindful of where your time is going and where you're showing up. Very
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. If you say yes to everyone, you often say no to yourself. And there's nuances to that, but I won't get
Mhm.
into that right now. But if we come from that space, though, I often find we get in trouble when we say yes when we mean no, and no when we mean yes. And so we're out of integrity with ourselves and others, and that creates unworkability in our life. And when we can restore that integrity, it's incredible what changes. And so if our conversation, Gigi, was your last opportunity to share the message that's on your spirit, that's on your heart with our listeners, what would you want to make sure you left them with if this was the last time they'd hear from you?
I believe that it was just brought to our forefront, right? It's right. It was right in front of us when you said it right there, integrity. And I think integrity, it's so important, that word. I love it. I just got excited when I heard integrity because integrity is doing what you say you're going to do. And I think that it's so important. And it goes right in hand with purpose, right? God's purpose for your life. And if you're in purpose, stay in purpose, but not just that, do it. Do it. If you're going to serve, show up, be there, be present and allow him to move and just be there as we talked about, Jamil.
Yeah.
Be there in the now. I love how you said be there in the now. Love it.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. And as we begin to wrap up, what is exciting you now? What are you working on, working towards that you'd like to share, if anything?
Yeah, great question. So we have a few events coming up here in 2025. We have our fifth annual Global Leadership Conference 2025. That's a virtual event. We also have our third annual Global Warriors Conference. That's our in-person event of the year in Palm Coast, Florida. And we have our sixth annual Global Domestic Violence and Breast Cancer event. We host that with Ragnar Sinikas with World Women Conference and Awards each year. And those are online. So the in-person event of the year, again, it's the third annual Global Warriors Conference. And again, it's not about us, it's about the people that we serve, and we love it. And not just that, I also have a book coming out here. It's called The Miracle Through the Storm, The Infinite Power of Faith. And my friend, he's a medical doctor, he said, Gigi, you managed to put your faith in there somehow, didn't you? I said, yes, I did. I sure did.
And how can people find out about how these events, how to connect with you, work with you, anything like that?
Yes, so you can find me on the website. You can also find on that's Life Service Center of America, LLC.com, and also on LinkedIn. Gigi Sabbat, picture an O in there, Sabbat, but picture an O in there, you'll get it, Sabbat, Gigi Sabbat. And not just that, again, circling back to the true crime book that we'll be releasing, my first true crime book, Miracle Through the Storm, The Infinite Power of Faith, that'll be released in June. And yeah, really looking forward to releasing that as well. It's an honor.
That's so exciting. And just another acknowledgement for you, but for our audience, please listen to this about you as well. You are such a wonderful creator because we can create and we can consume. And neither one is inherently bad, good, right, wrong. But the idea that very often when we're not creating the results we want in our life, it's because our ratio of creation, production, doing stuff to consuming, watching, reading, listening, things of that nature, being more passive, it's like 80% consuming, 20% creating. You clearly are in creation mode, and there's a lot of things that you're up to, whether it be events, books, all these different things, sharing your insights, your gifts, your story, all these kind of things just to empower, uplift, and help others. And for everyone listening, where could you step into creating more? Where can you, it doesn't need to be what Gigi's doing, it doesn't need to be what I'm doing, but where can you be doing more, not just thinking about doing? It just really changes everything.
That's right. And this is possible again because of the team. And I'm grateful for all of the individuals, our speakers who are part of our LSCOA speaker series, and also our sponsors and the community and our members. Just grateful. It's just a blessing to serve.
Yeah, so good. And so first of all, for our listeners, thank you so much today for your time, your energy, your attention. I think these are our most valuable assets. I don't take it lightly that you spent it here with us. I trust that there was something that stood out to you today that you can use to shift the course of the rest of your life. If this has resonated with you, I ask you to please share it far and wide, at least with one person, if not more. Leave a testimonial, whether it's a review on Apple, Spotify, a YouTube comment, wherever you're consuming this, helps people find it, helps the algorithm find it, all that kind of stuff. And so, Gigi, as we wrap up, anything you'd like to share in closing?
I just want to say that it's been an honor to be here with you today. And it's just been an honor in regards to the audience as well. Just remember, never give up and hold on to faith, and you can do this, and don't give up. I believe in you.
So beautiful. I believe in you too. So this podcast is called Transformation Starts Today, and I called it that because I have found that most people's favorite day to change their life is tomorrow, and that's why they stay stuck. But you can be different. You can decide that there was something that was spoken here today that resonated with you, that inner voice that's been being ignored to some degree, it's time to shift that and to start making different changes in your world. You'll be so happy you did, and the future will be so much more of what you hope it would be. All my love to you and your family. Have a beautiful rest of your day, and I look forward to the next time we connect. Thank you for being with us today. If this conversation served you, it would mean a lot if you left a review and shared this with anyone who may benefit. An extraordinary life without regret is available to you now. Choose it. It's your time.